There was a lot of just the same attitude of improvising with what's around, raw materials. And then it was basically, okay, Jen's got this strange bass, Cozy's got this lead guitar, Sleazy's running all these tapes of weird stuff, Chris has got the synthesizer. One thing we knew we didn't want was a drummer to play rhythms like that, because it struck us that rock bands were kind of trapped as soon as they had a drummer. The drummers always go into these particular Western European patterns that they can't stop themselves doing, because they grow up learning these patterns until it's driven into them so they can do them completely automatically and exactly on time, which is a great skill, but it's done. What's the point of doing something that's been done already for decades? There are other people who are always going to do it better. Why not do something that someone doesn't do? So it was really important to us to not have a drummer, which meant we needed something else to keep rhythm. And it fell between my bass, being used much more as a percussive thing. So we fed the bass through a Morley fuzz-wah and an echo deck, and sometimes a fuzz face as well. So that when we hit it, bang, like that, there'd be this explosion of sound and then this kind of bounce back. So you get this boom, 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 and you could alter the gap with the echo. And then Chris built a small drum machine, very simple one, but put it through this massive synthesizer so that you couldn't recognize any standard rock percussive sounds at all. So there were these rhythms, but they were very organic and very, very simple, and they were all processed. And basically, once we got to that point of having the sound, we also couldn't afford to buy amps and speakers, so we built our own PA too, from scratch. We just thought, let's just experiment and see what happens. Every weekend from the beginning of 1975 all the way through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'd all meet up at my house in Hackney in Beck Road, walk over to the old studio in the basement of this factory that we nicknamed the Death Factory in Hackney, and we would just jam. Hours and hours and hours we would jam. Sleep at my house, go back the next day and jam. So a lot of people don't realize how much time was spent evolving what became the industrial sound, because there wasn't one before. It was completely open territory. And basically we took a lesson from Burroughs and recorded everything. So every time we went to play and jam, we'd put this cassette recorder the other side of the space and switch it on and just record everything on cassette. And then when we were back at the house, before we went to sleep, we'd listen to it. And if we liked anything and thought, oh, that sounds kind of cool, we'd dub it across to another cassette. And so eventually we'd end up with all our favorite bits cut together on a new cassette. And the next week we'd think, can we reproduce that sound or not? And we would start jamming and see if we could get that sound to happen again. And during that we'd find some new noises, and bit by bit during 1975 the sound began originally just to be instrumental, but it began to happen and it began to sound really kind of interesting. And we were determined that we would make music that didn't sound like anything else that we could go out and buy, and certainly didn't sound like Top of the Pops. You know, I mean, that was glam rock era and horrible leftover disco. It was awful. It was the most kind of Tim Panelli commercial part of British music that they'd been in ages. It was a horror show. So that was basically how the sound evolved. And that's how you create completely new worlds. Collaging is so wonderful, because you just take something and something else, they're not appropriate, you put them together, and it's a world that never existed before, and you just made it. That's one of the great joys of doing any kind of creative work, is that you have this almost godlike moment where you can choose how a new world will be. No matter how small it is and how insignificant it might be to other people, you've made a new world by doing that.